Welcome into another episode of 345. I'm your boy ElzdaTruph, and on today's show, we got a special training camp edition. First, we're going to look at the full training camp roster for 6 different teams, and then we're going to predict which players will make the team. And I know we're supposed to do 5 topics, 3 minutes for each, but for this first 3 minutes, I'm going to do 2 teams that I feel were basically the lesser of 2 evils or pretty much easier to evaluate. But let me first just say, this kind of evaluating is not easy. This is the saddest part of any WNBA season, seeing some of the best players in college, some of your favorite players from overseas get cut and probably have to wait a whole nother year before they get this opportunity. But that being said, we're going to start with Washington and Connecticut. More specifically, in Washington is where I want to start. As you can see, they got some real good talent on this team, but just no real star. And I hate to say it, but I think this is going to be the worst team in the W. They got some really good players. They're going to compete every night, but I don't think they got enough players to close the deal in the fourth quarter and the second half of games. The Mystics really going to have to rely a lot on Brittany Sykes to keep this team together. She's the veteran leader. She's probably the best scorer on the team. They also have another veteran, Shatori Walker-Kimbrough. Shakira Austin, the defensive anchor. Maisha Hines-Allen is really good. Then you got Queen Egbo. She's a professional player. Carly Samuelson, Aaliyah Edwards, Stephanie Dosen. I feel like all those players are locks. Oh, and Ariel Atkins. Let me not forget to mention Ariel Atkins. She should have been mentioned way earlier because she's one of the top players on this team. But what it's going to come down to is players like Dee Richards, Emily Inksler, Honesty Scott Grayson, Julie Van Loo, and shout out twin Kaylin Truon out of Gonzaga. And I don't know how twin ain't get drafted because they basically the same player, but that's a topic for another day. As you know, it's only 12 players that can make a roster, and a few players on this team I feel like need a little bit more work. They haven't had much experience in the WNBA or none at all. They didn't make much noise overseas or in college, and it's really sad to say, but it's going to be very difficult for some of these players to make the team. That being said, let's reveal the players who we think going to make the team. Come on now, y'all know I'm not leaving Dee Richards off the roster. Honestly, Scott Grayson, I watch her ball too hard at Auburn. I think she's going to be the one that make this team. Dee Richards and Honestly Scott Grayson, those are my 2 wild cards who I think going to beat out the other players and make this team. Everybody else has 2 to 3 years of WNBA experience. But now let's quickly talk about the Connecticut Sun. Have a look at their training camp roster. They had a pretty good season last year, so I feel like they're going to be bringing a lot of players back. Shout out Tip Hayes, who retired. They definitely going to miss having her on this team. But there are some players on this team that are pretty much obvious locks. You got Rachel Branham, DeWanna Bonner, Dejanay Carrington, Taisha Harris, Mariah Jefferson, Brianna Jones, Tiffany Mitchell, Olivia Nelson-Adota, Alyssa Thomas, and I believe that's 9 players. We only got 3 roster spots remaining. Another player that I think got a really good chance at making this team is Shea Petty. She's a 5-year veteran. She's coming off an injury, but she's been getting buckets in this league for a long time. I don't think a little injury is going to slow her down. And from what I've seen over the past few years, these WNBA coaches really value experience. It's really difficult for young players to make teams. They really prefer them to go overseas or do something to try to get their game a little bit more prepared for the next level. But with that being said, let's reveal the players we have making the team. My wild card is Estelle Endure-Fall. She's a WNBA veteran. She's been a staple on teams for the past few years. And of course, rookie Tiana Jackson out of Kansas. She's the tallest player on the team. They gonna need her to guard Asia Wilson and other bigs in the league. I don't think there's no way they can let her out of that locker room or she gonna get snatched up real quick. But now let's move on to the Los Angeles Sparks. This team brought so many players in training camp that we had to do it in 2 different graphics. So for the first graphic, you're gonna see some of the players. Then I'm going to switch it to the second graphic where you see the other players they brought in. But on this first one, you see Candace Parker's beautiful face just crying after she won the championship for the Sparks. So sad to see her retire and go. I think she definitely deserved a farewell tour, but I understand her point of view. She didn't want to cheat the game. She didn't want to steal a roster spot for one of those young players, so we just have to look forward to her hopefully getting into coaching, getting into ownership, and helping move this game forward as she did when she first entered the WNBA. But now let's get to the roster. And first I want to correct something I previously said. I said that I wasn't seeing it out of Zaya Cook, and I'm sorry, I was completely wrong. I've been watching some tape, and that girl is really good. She's a lock to stay on this roster and to be in this league for a long time. That being said, there are a few other locks on this team. Rickea Jackson, come on now. They're not letting that girl go nowhere. Lexi Brown, one of the best shooters in the WNBA. De'Arica Hamby, champion, 6th Woman of the Year. Kia Nurse, longtime veteran, love watching her play. Ray Burrell, another sharpshooter. Those are all locks. Now let's go to the next graphic. The locks from here, I see Ari McDonald, Cameron Brink, Azurá Stevens. Everybody else, we're going to have to talk this out together. I believe that's about 9 players that I named, so that leaves 3 open roster spots. And let me just take you through my train of thought. This team pretty much has their front court players, Rickea Jackson, De'Arica Hamby, Cameron Brink, Azurá Stevens. Those 4 are going to be locks in the rotation, so now we need to start looking at other positions. Considering the guards that I said will be locks, Lexi Brown, Zaya Cook, they're not really true point guards. Zaya Cook more so can handle the ball and get the team in and out of their offense. Ari McDonald is just really small. She tend to get pushed around out there and she can't really get in and out the offense like you would expect, but she definitely going to be on this team. But I think this team definitely needs some help in the backcourt. That being said, let's reveal the players who we have being selected on the team. And y'all know how I miss California's own UCLA alum Monica Billings. She definitely going to be on this roster, no doubt. So that really only leaves 2 spots. And for those last 2 spots, I pick Nia Clouden and Mackenzie Forbes out of USC. First on Nia Clouden, she's one of the toughest, hard-nosed defenders that we got in the WNBA. I think you need that kind of dog on your team to help develop these young players, and hopefully they see her being intense on defense. That helped them raise their level on defense. And Mackenzie Forbes, she just came off playing with Juju Watkins. She was one of the best shooters in the nation. I really think if she can shoot the lights out in training camp, that them coaches gonna really keep her on the team. Lexi Brown, Mackenzie Forbes, Ray Burrell, and then you throw in Rickea Jackson. Now we talking about mid-range and 3-point snipers. But you know how this thing goes. There's the clock. We got to keep it moving. I wish more teams put out their full training camp rosters. I only got access to a few of them. But with that being said, let's move to the next team we have, the Indiana Fever. What I like about this training camp roster is that it's not oversized. They didn't bring in too many players. So it's going to be pretty simple to narrow this one down, I think. But that just gives us more time to talk about the team. So let's just run it down the list pretty easy. Grace Berger, Aaliyah Boston, Caitlin Clark, Lexi Hall, Kelsey Mitchell, Katie Lou Samuelson, what up sis, Victoria Saxton, Nalissa Smith, Celeste Taylor, Christy Wallace, Erica Wheeler. I think all of those players are locks, so that leaves 1 roster spot remaining. Damaris Dantas is a longtime WNBA veteran. She was a first-round pick back in 2012. She's been on the Brazilian national team for a number of years. So of all the players, I think she has the best opportunity to make this team. Then you got Timmy Fagbanele. She won a championship with the Minnesota Lynx in 2017. However, the last time she played in the WNBA was 2019. But I know she's hoping that IQ and experience can get her back in the W. And she went to Harvard and USC. Let me not forget to mention that. The Indiana Fever also drafted Leilani Correa. She spent 3 years at St. John's, 2 at Florida. She's also a really solid shooter, 6-foot guard, pretty nice perimeter defender. But honestly, I think it's an uphill climb for her. She's going to have to go into training camp and play lights out, probably shoot 50% from 3 for them to actually give her a chance to make this team. Maya Caldwell, a beautiful guard they drafted out of the 3rd round, she averaged 10 points for them, but she only played in 9 games. But she was one of the first full-time starters out of the 3rd round, so I think she probably going to end up getting this last roster spot. But it's going to be between Maya Caldwell and Leilani Correa. And I also forgot to mention Timmy Fagbanele was drafted out of the 3rd round. So you got 3 third-round picks battling for 1 spot. Oh, it's going to be a tough training camp in Indiana, let me tell you that. And before I talk a little bit about the team, let me just tell you the player who I think going to make it out of those 3. I'm giving it to Maya Caldwell. First full-time starter out of the 3rd round, coming in averaging 10 points. They couldn't really do nothing with her. I think with the opportunity she's about to get right now playing with Caitlin Clark, she's not going to let this slip through her fingers. But now for the honest truth, a lot of them players ain't even going to touch the court this year. Aaliyah Boston playing 35 plus, Caitlin Clark playing 35 plus, Kelsey Mitchell playing 35 plus, Nalissa Smith playing 35 plus. The rest of y'all going to have to find y'all spots on the team because we running 4-man action or 4-woman action this whole season. I did say I think this team gonna make the playoffs, and I'm gonna give y'all my power rankings next show. But for now, with those 4 players and the firepower that they can potentially have coming off this bench, oh, they're going to be hard to deal with, trust me. But enough about the Indiana Fever, let's move on to the New York Liberty. This is another team where I feel like the roster is pretty much already filled. New York just bringing bodies into training camp to practice against. Most of these players really don't got no shot. They pretty much going to bring back everybody from last year. They might add maybe 1 or 2 new players. But y'all have a look at the training camp roster. But what I want to talk about very briefly is, you know this one person missing? Marine Johannes. I didn't want to be right about this, but I said on the Chic and Ball podcast when I broke down the New York Liberty that if they not going to let her be a starter, then she probably not going to come back. She just going to stay in France. And it seems like that's what she did. We all know the kind of baller she is, the kind of star she is. And there's really no reason for her to just be coming off somebody's bench playing less than 20 minutes a game. Especially when she can just be in France, making more money, getting more playing time, and actually winning championships. But now let's get back to the roster. This team lost Stephanie Dolson, so I think that's why they drafted Jess Carter. So I think Jess Carter is going to be a lock on this team. Then you obviously got Sabrina Ionescu, Jonquel Jones, Benijah Laney Hamilton, Niara Sabally, Brianna Stewart, Kayla Thornton, and Courtney Vandersloot. Those are all players from last year that are definitely coming back. That being said, my first wild card, a player that I've been hearing a lot of rumblings about, Marquisha Davis. There's been some noise coming out of training camp that she looking like Kalia Copper. And if she playing in attack mode like that, then she definitely going to be on this team. And in the past, we had a whole lot of upset rookies coming in and out of training camp. This year and years going forward, it's so much talent that's coming out. I think these veterans are really going to be the ones that are going to be out of a job. So we can't wait to get these extra teams in here because the talent is just immense. And my next wild card, a player from New York that's been grinding for a long time trying to get to the WNBA, Brianna Frazier. She spent 4 years at Maryland. She was a McDonald All-American. She's 26 years old, so she last played at Maryland in 2019. She had been grinding in overseas leagues, but I feel like she's gotten so much better. She's 26 years old now, and I think this is the best opportunity she's going to have to make a team. She was on the Connecticut Sun training camp roster back in 2021, but didn't make that roster. So this is her first time back over here in a few years. I'm hoping she can get that spot, but I guess we'll see. The third and final player who I feel like will make this roster is Ivania Dojkic. She played for the Seattle Storm last season and even started in 15 games for them. Another one of the few sharpshooters we got in the WNBA, shot the 3 ball at 41%. She got the flair like Marine Johannes. And after seeing what the Aces did to Sabrina Ionescu in the finals, this team probably need to get more in the backcourt. This team really need to think about getting some tougher players on defense because they got punked by the Aces and I do not want to see that happen again. And now the last training camp roster we're going to talk about will be the Dallas Wings. The Dallas Wings brought a total of 16 players into their training camp, a lot of young players, a lot of returning players, so of course the locks were easy to pick out, but I think this is one of the more underrated rosters in the league. You can stack this roster up against anybody, it's just up to them to execute and win these games down the stretch. But just running down their starting 5 alone, you got Veronica Burton, Arike Agumbawale, Satu Sabally, Natasha Howard, Tierra McGowan. Then coming off the bench, you got Kalani Brown, Maddie Segrist. Those 7 players right there are enough for a full team. If those players can keep progressing and their trajectory keep going up, then there's nobody that will be able to stop this team except them. You got Arike Agumbawale, she a walking 25 points per game. Satu Sabally is damn near a walking triple-double. Tierra McGowan, Kalani Brown, they big as hell. The only thing that really gets in their way is speed. Asia Wilson and Brianna Stewart, they just kind of speed right past them, but other than that, those 2 are really dominant in the league. And then they bringing in 3 other top 5 picks, starting with Stephanie Soares out of Iowa State. 6'6" Brazilian. She don't even have to play as much because of Kalani Brown and Tierra McGowan, but when she do play, I already know what she gonna do out there. It's a long list of Brazilian women being successful in this league, and I don't think it's gonna stop with her. Then you got Lou Lopez. They drafted her number 5 last year. She came all the way from Mexico to Fairfield College, ended up playing the season for UConn. And players that played at UConn or have had any kind of conversation with Gina Auriemma, they seem like they're going to work out in this league. So I can't wait to see her on the court. I feel like she got a chance to be the starter. And then, of course, they brought in my girl, JC Sheldon. And let me just tell you one thing about her. She is a track star. I call her the bait queen because she just bait people into dumb passes. Big TNR defense. I think with her speed, she also has a chance of being a starter. She might be one of the fastest players in the WNBA already. She plays very under control. She can shoot the ball. And she's more of a pass-first point guard, which this team really needs. So just to recap, that's 5 starters, 2 players that I named off the bench, 3 rookies. That's 10 total players, so that gives us 2 remaining players. And I forgot to mention Crystal Dangerfield. She won Rookie of the Year being drafted out of the 2nd round. It's no doubt that she gonna make this team. I'm still mad at the voters though, because they selected her Rookie of the Year over Satu Sabali. But hey, even Beyonce don't win all the Grammys. You just gotta show them why they was wrong. And it's kind of ironic that they teammates now. I wonder if they ever talk about that. But never mind, like I always say, that's a conversation for another day. But really, they only leaves 1 spot remaining. That last spot, I'm going to have to give to rookie Jaylen Brown. She had an amazing preseason debut, scored 21 points, and I know she left an impression on them coaches. If you want to watch some beautiful women and some beautiful basketball, this is a team you need to look at because they got them all over the court. But there you have it, another episode of 345. Comment your prediction on these training camp rosters. But again, thank you very much for listening and watching. I'm ElzdaTruph for PRNM. Talk to you on the next one.